Almost every NFL draft is given a tagline or legacy based on its top prospects or a particular position group. 2021 had the 5 quarterbacks in the first round, 2024 had the most offensive players ever selected in the first round, and the 2014 draft is considered to have hosted one of the greatest wide receiver classes in NFL history. But what about the rest of that class? Were they nearly as legendary? And which receivers actually were considered top of the class? Today, we re-examine the top 10 picks of the 2014 NFL Draft.
With the first pick in the 2014 NFL Draft, the Houston Texans select Jadeveon Clowney, defensive end, South Carolina.
Wow, Michigan at the 41. What a hit! Ball's free, on the ground. South Carolina deserves to have it, and they do!
Clowney played solid football through his first 5 years with the Texans, including back-to-back 9-sack seasons and 3 consecutive Pro Bowl selections, but it wasn't enough to earn him an extension. Instead, Houston franchise tagged the edge rusher and traded him to the Seattle Seahawks for a minimum return. An underwhelming year in Seattle was followed by an injury-plagued year in Tennessee before his luck finally turned around in back-to-back seasons on mercenary deals with the Cleveland Browns. However, after totaling 65 tackles and 11 sacks, Clowney complained about the way he was being used in 2022 and was set free yet again. In 2023 though, Clowney showed his top pick talent on a 1-year deal with the Baltimore Ravens, where he played in all 19 of their games, tying his career high of 9.5 sacks while being a veteran presence on the best scoring defense of 2023. His efforts were rewarded this offseason with the first multi-year contract he signed since his rookie deal, getting 2 years and $20 million with the Panthers, and returning to the Carolinas where he grew up. Clowney may not be the flashiest number 1 overall pick in history, but he has an underrated career and seems to have plenty left in the tank.
Second pick in the 2014 NFL Draft, the St. Louis Rams select Greg Robinson, tackle, Auburn.
Early on in his career, Robinson was criticized for issues with his weight and his discipline, becoming a heavily penalized player by his 3rd professional season. When the Rams signed Andrew Whitworth though, he was moved to offensive guard, although he was soon bumped out to right tackle instead. And after 3 serviceable but not really excellent seasons, the Rams decided to get some return before letting Robinson walk and traded him to the Detroit Lions for a late round pick. He started 6 games for the Lions at left tackle, but was waived after suffering a frustrating injury. Robinson got another chance with the Cleveland Browns in 2018, signing a 1-year deal to be a backup swing tackle. He took over from rookie Desmond Harrison in Week 9 of 2018 and maintained the spot, and was rewarded with another 1-year deal before the 2019 season, being named the starter. Robinson was solid in 2019 with the Browns, and his arrows seemed to be pointing up, but then he made choices that ended his NFL career completely prematurely. In the 2019-2020 offseason, Robinson was arrested with almost 160 pounds of marijuana on him near the Mexican border.
Depending on the quality of the product, he was driving around with anywhere between 300 grand and 750 gur in street value pot. Now that seems like a lot of money, right? Until you remember that Greg Robinson's salary with the Browns last season was $5.5 million before roster bonuses. In other words, this guy's driving around with roughly a game check of Kron. And for that, he is now facing the possibility of 20 years in prison.
And although he was only sentenced to 5 years probation, the court case and Robinson's less than stellar output so far in his career made him more trouble than he was worth. And I mean, there are absolutely no really ways around it that he is our first bust of the 2014 draft class.
With the 3rd pick in the 2014 NFL Draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Blake Bortles, quarterback, Central Florida.
At 6'5" and boasting stellar passing stats in college, Bortles was far and away the best quarterback prospect in the 2014 draft. And as the player chosen to be the Jags franchise quarterback, he would need to play up to that. He was made the starter early in his rookie year and would go on to break multiple rookie records with his accuracy and running ability. However, he took 55 sacks in his 14 rookie games and had to prove development going forward. Despite solid passing numbers, Bortles failed to elevate the Jaguars early in his career and led the NFL in sacks and interceptions multiple times. This all changed late in the 2017 season though. as Bortles went on a still legendary tear, posting 3 games in a 4-week stretch with a passer rating over 100, more than 300 passing yards, and totaling 8 touchdowns without an interception. Behind this streak from their quarterback, the Jaguars won their division for the first time since the AFC South was created with a 10-7 record. Once in the playoffs, Bortles continued his Linsanity-like run, rushing for 88 yards in a playoff win over the Bills and upsetting the Steelers in the divisional round in a 45-42 shootout. In the 2017 AFC Championship game, though, the magic wore off and the Jaguars blew a 10-point lead to the Patriots. But I mean, all in all, this run honestly gave him the chance to get that second contract. And although it was a mid-level contract that he did get a second contract with the Jaguars because of that Linsanity-like run. And honestly, the Jaguars were really banking on hoping to see that magic kind of kick in again, but honestly, it just never came about. In the middle of the 2018 season, he would be benched only to be released by the team in the following offseason. Since then, Bortles has bounced around teams without ever being able to refine the magic. And now with the 4th pick, the Buffalo Bills selected the electric Sammy Watkins out of Clemson. As a true freshman wide receiver, Watkins had gone for over 1,200 yards and had been a constant producer in college. The Bills traded up to get the speedster, needing to bolster a roster around quarterback EJ Manuel. Watkins fit the system and contributed quickly, catching around 2,000 yards through his first 2 seasons. Before his 3rd season, however, though, that's when injuries really started to become a big issue. With a broken bone in his foot causing Watkins to miss several months of football, he was traded in the following offseason to the Los Angeles Rams, where he struggled to pick up and prove his worth. The Kansas City Chiefs, though, were still willing to bet on Watkins' talent and signed him to a 3-year deal in 2018, during which he was a primary weapon for young superstar Patrick Mahomes. Here he finally started to show glimpses of the talent that made him a top pick, going for over 100 yards in the 2019 AFC Championship game and 98 more in the Super Bowl win. After another down year in 2020, though, Watkins was allowed to walk, and he hasn't had another healthy season since. Injuries hampered his time in Baltimore and Green Bay, and while he hasn't formally retired, he hasn't been on an NFL roster since 2022.
The 5th pick in the 2014 NFL Draft, the Oakland Raiders select Khalil Mack, linebacker, Buffalo.
An excellent senior season boosted Mack's draft stock and made him the highest drafted player from his college in history. Through his first 4 seasons in Oakland, Mack recorded more than 40 sacks and 68 tackles for loss, making 3 straight Pro Bowls and making back-to-back All-Pro first teams, as well as winning the 2016 Defensive Player of the Year award. As a pure edge rusher in the Raiders scheme, he flourished. But when he demanded a contract worthy of his talent, the Raiders traded him to the Chicago Bears for a first-rounder and change. Immediately, the Bears made Mack the highest paid defensive player in NFL history at the time, locking him in for 6 years. After a frustrating injury in 2021, Mack was traded to the LA Chargers, who were hoping he could help them secure playoff action. While the overall team effort fell behind those ambitions, 8 sacks and another Pro Bowl for Mack arrived in 2022, followed by a dominant 2023 campaign in which he posted a career-high 17 sacks. Inspired by the new regime captained by Jim Harbaugh, Mack has agreed to restructure his deal that will keep him in LA for at least 1 more year. And now at pick 6, the Atlanta Falcons would take Jake Matthews, an offensive tackle out of Texas A&M. And I mean, honestly, I get it. This name really doesn't jump off the draft boards like other names on this list, but I mean, there's honestly an argument to be made that Jake Matthews is one of the best players to come out of the 2014 NFL draft. He's a tough physical blocker and established himself as the Falcons' starting left tackle before his first season and played most of his rookie year on a bad ankle while still blocking efficiently. And as I'm making this video right now, he's only missed 1 game in his career, and it was because of that bad ankle. Besides that, he's never missed another game. Despite only making 1 Pro Bowl, Matthews has been the franchise left tackle the Falcons needed and earned multiple contracts as such, including a 5-year $75 million contract in 2018 and a 3-year extension in 2022. In his more than 11,000 NFL snaps, Matthews has committed only 54 penalties, and though he may never be considered among the greatest left tackles in history, Jake Matthews has been an anchor piece for Atlanta through his entire decade-long career.
The 7th pick in the 2014 NFL Draft, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers select Mike Evans, wide receiver, Texas A&M.
And now of all the players covered today, Mike Evans probably needs the least introduction possible. Not only has he never played anywhere but Tampa Bay since being drafted, but he has also consistently been one of the best wide receivers on the planet. And he is still somehow one of football's most underrated players. He kicked things off with just over 1,000 yards receiving in his rookie year before announcing himself in just 14 starts with a 1,200-yard season in 2015. In his 10 seasons in the league, Evans has established himself as extremely reliable and effective regardless of who lines up under center, going for more than 1,000 yards every single year. He has broken NFL records for the youngest player to hit every milestone he's reached, and his 1,000-yard season streak also appears completely untouchable. On top of that, he has only committed 4 career fumbles. His ability to play through injuries has been a factor in this Hall of Fame level production, but the questionable quarterbacking the Bucs had pre-Brady only emphasizes his quality. And I mean, speaking of Brady, Evans was completely instrumental in that 2021 run they had, when he made his first postseason appearances, catching an extra 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. For his efforts, he earned a Super Bowl ring along with his 4th career Pro Bowl nod. And when Baker Mayfield was named the Bucs starter in 2023, the end seemed to be near in sight, only for Evans to then erupt yet again, making his 5th Pro Bowl with more than 1,200 receiving yards and tying the league lead in receiving touchdowns at 13. He signed another deal to stay with the Bucs going forward, and after several seasons free from a nagging injury, there's no reason why Mike Evans won't continue to flourish. And now at 8th overall, the Cleveland Browns selected cornerback Justin Gilbert, an Oklahoma State cornerback coming off of an All-American in a first-team All-Big 12 season. Gilbert ran a 4.35 40-yard dash and was considered DB1 in 2014 by most people, but despite his high draft stock, Gilbert failed to stack up. After 2 seasons in Cleveland, he had already missed several games due to injury and only had 1 interception to his name, which came at a loss anyway. Gilbert was then traded to the Steelers in 2016 for just absolutely breadcrumbs after what he had been drafted for. But I mean, even with Mike Tomlin, he couldn't even get any potential out of this kid either. After just 12 games as a bench corner for Pittsburgh, he was released by the Steelers and sought a new landing spot. The NFL had other plans, however, as Gilbert was suspended for a year as a free agent for violating the league's rules on substance abuse. Gilbert never appeared on an NFL team after the suspension, but around 6 years later, he made his return to football and now plays with the Sioux City Bandits of the Arena Football League.
With the 9th pick in the 2014 NFL Draft, the Minnesota Vikings select Anthony Barr, linebacker, UCLA.
Anthony Barr, an outside linebacker from UCLA, played 4 college football seasons before competing with Khalil Mack for the crown of top linebacker in the class. At 6'5" and running a 4.4 40, Barr has been an electric athlete while remaining decently productive as well. He set his career high for solo tackles and sacks in his rookie year, but has had numbers circling those zones ever since. As a very efficient coverage and run-stopping linebacker, Barr has only amassed 18.5 sacks in his career, but has totaled over 550 total tackles. And I mean, even on his rookie deal, Barr made 4 straight consecutive Pro Bowls too, despite many people saying he was slacking or not even living up to the number 9 overall pick that he was taken at. Before the 2019 season, Barr, a free agent, nearly left the Vikings for the Jets, but was brought back on a 5-year contract worth $67 million. He missed most of the 2020 season with a torn pec, but returned on a reworked deal in 2021. Barr was injury-riddled once again, making this the start of his decline. He spent 2022 as a depth piece for the Cowboys before returning to Minnesota for 4 games in 2023. And it might be too soon to say if Barr is going to make his retirement official now, but it seems like his body has now retired after 6 years of honestly great defensive football. Rounding out the top 10 though, we have Eric Ebron selected by the Detroit Lions at number 10 overall, who is a tight end out of North Carolina. After 3 years of college, Ebron was the consensus top tight end on a board completely covered with a lot of wide receiver talent. So he was a natural fit for a Detroit team looking to boost Matthew Stafford's weapons cabinet of Calvin Johnson and Golden Tate. And although Ebron certainly did his job and is clearly the top tight end from this draft, he definitely didn't live up to the status of a top 10 pick. Ebron was solid as a rookie, but battled injuries in his second and third seasons, failing to establish himself as a top weapon in the Lions system. Despite having exercised the 5th option on his deal, the Lions opted to waive Ebron in 2018 and signed in Indianapolis with Andrew Luck. And I mean, in that season, everything seemed to click for the tight end, with a career high in receiving yards at 750 and more than doubling his career high in touchdowns, ending the season with 13 and making his first Pro Bowl. Like, I mean, the guy was finally starting to develop, but yet again, after earning another spot, injuries completely derailed his career. In 2020, Ebron signed another 2-year deal, this time with the Steelers. But even with some improvement and a clean bill of health, he was quickly replaced by Pat Freiermuth in 2021. Since his contract has expired, Ebron has been a free agent, with no team showing much interest in the one-time Pro Bowler. But now, after vast disappointment in the 2013 NFL draft that we just went over in the video prior, the league's offseason needed a win, and the top picks of the 2014 draft had it all. From first ballot Hall of Famers to first ballot just complete busts, the draft was absolutely loaded. The rest of the first round also saw names like Odell Beckham Jr., Brandon Cooks, and Aaron Donald also get selected, with other highlights like Devontae Adams and Derek Carr to go with the lowlights of Johnny Manziel. All in all, though, the 2014 draft was certainly a class stocked with wide receiver talent, but the other players are to not be overlooked.